Every institution speaks the language of AI safety, drafting regulations and ethical principles. But beneath this machinery lies an empty space, the anthropological vacuum. We deploy audits, alignment protocols, and compliance checklists to ensure that artificial intelligence serves human values. The operational machinery of ethics is incredibly sophisticated. This effort operates on a massive scale. International bodies draft sweeping legislation, like the EU AI Act, to enshrine these protections into law across entire continents. Yet, even at the highest levels of global heritage and policy, there is a distinct silence at the center of all this activity. These frameworks are designed to protect fundamental human rights, but they completely bypass a necessary baseline. What exactly is the human being these procedures exist to protect? What is the specific nature of the creature whose dignity we are auditing for? The core problem is not that artificial intelligence possesses too much power. The problem is that we have built a vast ethics apparatus without a foundation in anthropology. AI merely exposed the fact that we do not know what we are. Building these massive ethical guardrails without explicitly defining the human is like paving a highway without deciding where it leads. It represents an abdication of our authority to govern the technology we create. Consider a hospital that implements a new diagnostic support system. The AI scans medical imaging with exceptional precision, reading thousands of patient files in seconds. It easily clears every technical benchmark. The clinical validation is flawless, and the algorithmic fairness audits return perfect scores. But when the Institutional Review Board is asked to explain how this system specifically honors patient dignity, the procedural logic breaks down. The compliance report addresses data privacy and oversight, but it has no parameter for evaluating the dignity of the person being diagnosed. We are experiencing the mirror effect. Artificial intelligence has become extraordinarily adept at imitating the outputs of human cognition. It writes, it reasons, it diagnoses. When a language model drafts a competent legal brief or generates a poignant piece of music, the traditional boundaries separating human exceptionalism from machine computation dissolve. Categories like authorship, intelligence, and creativity lose their distinct outlines. These concepts were never as rigorously defined as we assumed. They were held together by cultural habit. We invoked them seamlessly because, until now, humans were the only entities capable of producing such work. The machine is not responsible for our crisis of identity. By imitating our behavior with startling fidelity, the technology simply makes our evasion of the anthropological question impossible to sustain. The AI ethics industry relies heavily on a specific vocabulary. Standards bodies and corporate review boards constantly scrutinize systems for bias, representativeness, and fairness. These are valuable operational metrics, but they remain purely procedural. None of these terms require a developer to articulate what human flourishing actually looks like in practice, or what conditions a human life requires to thrive. The concept of value alignment illustrates this emptiness perfectly. We demand that systems align with human values, but we are entirely unclear about which values or whose values take precedence when efficiency conflicts with empathy or privacy competes with security. Value alignment relies on a false premise. It assumes we already possess a clear, universally shared picture of the human good that we can simply encode into an algorithm. When policy documents invoke concepts like human rights or human dignity without grounding them in an underlying anthropology, those words cease to function as operational principles. They act as rhetorical placeholders. The procedural machinery built around AI ethics postpones difficult philosophical conflicts. It tests whether a model behaves according to its specifications, while remaining completely silent on what those specifications are ultimately supposed to achieve. Relying on procedural alignment without defining humanity means we build ethical frameworks on a missing foundation. This effectively hands our ultimate moral authority over to corporate optimization metrics. The reason we rely on placeholders is historical.
In the West, we no longer share a single, unified definition of what a human being is. We carry a fractured inheritance, consisting of 3 distinct cultural frameworks that attempt to define human worth. These frameworks sit side by side, often contradicting one another. The religious inheritance grounds human dignity in the image of a divine creator, granting inherent worth to all. However, in modern pluralistic societies, this theological claim has lost its jurisdictional authority to shape secular policy. The Enlightenment inheritance attempts to replace that framework by locating human dignity entirely in our rational agency and our capacity for autonomous self-governance. But tying human worth to cognitive capacities creates a fatal vulnerability. If dignity depends on rational autonomy, it becomes a sliding scale. This strictly cognitive standard actively excludes the infant, the severely disabled, and those with advanced dementia. Our third inheritance, the romantic framework, pushes back by locating human worth in emotional authenticity and creative expression. Yet it proves too thin to support the rigorous weight of institutional ethics and legal judgment. When we are forced to produce a unified legislative response to artificial intelligence, these overlapping inheritances pull in different directions. They fail to offer a stable, coherent baseline. This fractured inheritance leaves policymakers equipped only with fragmented intuitions. We insist humans are special, but we lack the shared vocabulary to explain why. This crisis of definition extends far beyond global policy. The anthropological vacuum operates quietly in the background of our ordinary routines, steadily rearranging our daily lives. Consider the act of frictionless delegation. When an employee faces a difficult interpersonal conversation, they might ask an AI assistant to draft the uncomfortable feedback, bypassing the struggle of finding the right words. By outsourcing this cognitive friction to a machine, we execute a subtle psychological shift. We do not simply save time, we surrender a portion of our judgment to a system that has no stake in the outcome. The friction of searching for language, of navigating relational difficulty, is not a technical inefficiency. Wrestling with a problem until it yields words of your own is a core biological and social mechanism of human self-formation. This daily rearrangement happens in 1,000 incremental moments: the suggested reply, the auto-completed sentence, the outsourced decision. Over time, it establishes a new baseline for how we interact with the world. Within this new baseline, the biological effort required to think, interpret, or relate is no longer seen as a developmental necessity. It is viewed merely as a systemic flaw to be optimized away. By eagerly removing the cognitive friction from our lives, we become less practiced in the art of being human. We unknowingly forfeit our capacity for independent judgment, self-authorship, and ultimate agency. Failing to explicitly answer the anthropological question is not a neutral oversight, it is an active vulnerability that algorithmic systems exploit. When we refuse to state clearly what makes a human life worthy of protection, we execute a total surrender of our institutional and moral authority. This triggers a basic rule of institutional physics. When a philosophical space is left empty, power aggressively rushes in to fill it. Because we lack a shared anthropology, those who build the systems supply the answer implicitly. They encode their own definitions of humanity directly into the architecture, optimizing for their specific business models and performance targets. In this paradigm, a human being is stripped of its complex, embodied nature. We are redefined as mere data-generating entities, nodes to be sorted, predicted, and managed for maximum throughput. If we cannot articulate the difference that makes a difference, we cannot govern the technology. We can only react to environments it constructs around us. The mirror of artificial intelligence has done its work. It forces us to confront our own empty reflection. We must now do the agonizing philosophical work of naming what we are. If we don't, we resign ourselves to letting the machines name us instead.